Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another part of our speedrun guide for Ultimate Alliance 3. Today we will be talking about the Dark Dimension and what is required to get through this area effectively and efficiently. This is probably one of the more problematic areas for a couple of different reasons, both due to characters being a little bit sparse in a new game run to get through some of these fights as efficiently as possible, as well as some of the puzzles just being a little bit tedious and time consuming to break down. But we'll talk about the best things that you can do in both of those situations. So, getting through this area, there's not a whole lot that you need to look out for. Initially, you'll just need to make your way all the way down to this first area of mandatory combat, which is activated with an unskippable cutscene. Now, if you're playing in New Game Plus, best thing that you can do is set up this soul siphon right here in the very middle to pull all of these mindless ones into one single area. And it just so happens that one of those mindless ones got stuck behind that pillar, so you may want to play around a little bit with some of the placement to make sure that you can get the maximum yield out of that area as you can. As soon as that fight is over, you'll need to talk with Elsa Bloodstone and immediately skip through her dialogue. That will allow you to progress through this portal, which gets you to the next section. Now, on along to this next part, there are a couple of natural obstacles that you will need to break your way through. Now, for any variation of this, you should have access, or you will have access to Nightcrawler. And what I recommend is going in with his legendary tail ability, and that should one-shot all of these little artifacts that are gatekeeping the progress to later portions of the level. Now, right here, there is a minuscule time skip that you can do if you line things up correctly. And basically what you'll need to do is get up on this little apex ledge here, and then you'll need to carefully time your double jump with Nightcrawler in order to make your way up there. And the timing on it is very tight. So you may need to practice and grind this out in order to make sure that you can get your way up there as quickly as you can. Now, you can get up here easier with characters that do not have teleports, but instead have double jumps. They can still make their way up onto that ledge a little bit quicker. But of course, Nightcrawler being the fastest for movement speed, it's best if you can work that out with him as opposed to other members of the party. Making your way down through this next portal, you're going to find yourself next to the next objective here. And you don't have to jump all the way down here, but I like to because it can save you a couple of seconds as that falling animation takes place during the freeze frame that occurs thereafter. Now, getting down into this little valley here, you're going to have 3 more of these artifacts you'll need to make your way through. And the legendary tail ability again does very well at melting through those and getting Nightcrawler into position as quickly as possible. Now, there is going to be a little bit of time to kill here, and if you're in a new game setting and you want to gain a couple of bonus experience, you can layer into these opponents a little bit, but it's not going to make a crucial or overly large difference here. So what you'll need to do is make your way through these mandatory combat sections here. Once you're through this section, and again in a New Game Plus scenario, the best thing that you can do is to use Thanos Infinite and his Soul Siphon in order to draw all of your opponents into one central focal point. And once you've made your way through there, you're going to have a section that I actually think was bugged in its development, because you can see here, Ghost Rider has one of those interact with me icons above his head, but it is not actually required to interact with him in order to make your way through this portal. So either this was not supposed to have a interaction built into it, and the speech bubble that's above his head is incorrect, or it was coded incorrectly to the point where the portal will just spawn in anyway, despite not interacting with Ghost Rider in order to activate the portal. Either way, I'm not complaining that that's the way that this works. Now from here, what you'll want to do is make your way along this top section if you can, because it avoids some of the hairier portions down below. And then you'll need to make your way down here to take out both that arcane artifact as well as the fire demons that spawn in there as well. Now, if you get your jump just right, you can skip around that portal a little bit. And then this is an area that gets a little bit tricky because characters that teleport can actually have a bit of a detriment at certain parts of those steps. So having a character that flies may be more or the easier path, but Nightcrawler can still be faster. Now, the Doctor Strange fight here can be particularly difficult for newer players, as well as characters that don't have any buffs to applied to them. And that's not for this first section of the fight, but rather the second section. And what you'll need to do here is be very, very mindful of the different attacks that Doctor Strange can throw out at you. That attack where he rains fire down from the sky is particularly annoying. Where he summons up those pillars of flames underneath your feet can be really bad. But particularly the worst one is right there where he channels his bolts of Balthak infused with the flames of the Faltine. That can really mess you up and burn through your health, especially in a new game setting and a new game no buff setting. So you'll need to be extra cautious about that and make sure that you are on your ball game for dodging out of the way of those attacks as they are thrown out at you. Once you have defeated both stages of the Doctor Strange fight, you will need to interact with him in order to skip his dialogue and activate this portal, in which case you will be able to make your way through this next section with a relative amount of ease, all things considered. Now here again, Nightcrawler does fairly well with his legendary tail, and then you're going to have your teammates summoned down to you in this little pit for an additional amount of brawling that takes place hereafter. Now, either way, you're going to have to slog through these opponents, but having Thanos Infinite here does certainly help, because again, this Soul Siphon can be set up to really draw all of the opponents into one central location and makes them a lot easier to get through. And then attacking into them and the arcane artifact that comes through here will allow this section of the floor to rise up. Now, similar to what we did before, if you time things correctly, you can make your way around here. And then what's ideally meant for you to happen here, what's intended, is for you to pick up one of these crystals and get charged up from this arcane artifact over here. However, what you can do with Thanos Infinite is you can just use a single stage ultimate power in order to make your way through that with just a beam attack as it goes through. So that's certainly an option of what you can do to get through that portion a little bit quicker. Now, I've seen a couple of runs where people really get hung up here, and this whole first area is optional. There's no combat that is mandatory here in order for you to get through. So you'll just want to make your way in to the back section here, where you will need to take out these arcane artifacts in order to unlock the progress to later portions of the stage. Once you've taken out that arcane artifact, you'll need to head across the battlefield and make your way up to this portal, which will drop you down. And then it's just a matter of attacking into that ice arcane artifact on that center pillar in order to deactivate the final rift, and that will let you pass on into a bit of a head spinning area. And as long as you can navigate that well enough, you'll go into the Loki fight. The Loki fight, again, is one of those that's straightforward. You just need to skip past some of the dialogue here. I don't know why I'm setting up the Soul Siphon, just kind of a force of habit. But it does not necessarily help you, or does not help you at all, really, when attacking into Loki. Now, what you'll need to do is take note of which version of Loki here has damage going into that fight, so you can quickly hone in on him and finish out the fight. That's really the biggest trick that you need to do, because any of his clones that spawn in that second part of the fight do have full health and full stagger bar. I think that that fight would have been made a lot more difficult if they spawned in at the exact same level of Loki and when that fight starts, and by a lot more difficult, I mean just slightly more confusing, because they do take more damage than the regular version of Loki. Now, when you get into this portion of the map, there's a couple of approaches that one can take. What I really like to do in New Game Plus specifically is set up a couple of these areas where I can draw my opponents into one central location, and then I like to throw in 2 of these crystals at partial charge in order to take down that barrier. Then you'll want to summon another soul siphon as far back as you can, set up 1 loyal servant here, set up Dr. Doom again here, and then use his Spark of Genius in order to melt through the remainder of that barrier. And in all honesty, you could probably just use Dr. Doom's Loyal Servant and Spark of Genius in order to really melt through that barrier in a New Game Plus setting. In a New Game setting, you will want to burn your way through that encounter as organically as you would by collecting up those souls or those orbs, charging them up, and then throwing them into the barricade. And you can, at that later stage, use Hulk's Unstoppable Charge to burn through what is remaining of that barrier, as opposed to waiting for some of your opponents to charge up those crystals. Or, heaven forbid, have a fully charged or partially charged crystal in your hand that then gets knocked out of you by an approaching attack by an opponent. But those are all the tips that I need to give for that previous section. We now have the Dormammu fight, which we need to make our way through. Now, starting off here, you'll want to refrain from picking up some of those crystals until that initial onslaught of orbs has come through. And then here, what you will honestly want to do is wait for this next attack to come in and get as charged up as you can from the attack of your opponents in order to fully stagger out Dormammu. And you saw there that I did not have a fully charged crystal, and so it did not take him out completely, and I had to wait for a second crystal to partially charge up. So you'll want to wait until this orb around the crystal that I'm holding expands beyond my kind of natural border of the character, like it's showing right now. That is where you're going to get the maximum amount of damage in on either the Dormammu and his stagger bar or the barriers that he conjures up. As you see here, we've now bursted that barrier, and a good guarantee for that is singling out any of the areas where you have thunder being summoned down by your opponents. And we'll want to make our way through the remainder of this fight. You can set up some more of these loyal servants and just force your way through this barrier. I think that this is a more surefire method of getting through there, and then you can just continue to mash that attack into Dormammu. Of course, in a new game run or new game no buffs run, you do not have that as an available option for you. So you will need to find your ways through that fight by using the crystals, charging them up to their maximum efficiency. But that's everything that I have for you in the Dark Dimension, so please let me know what you think in the comments down below, and don't forget to leave a like for more daily variety content. We'll be back with the next installment in this series on Wednesday of next week, but please stick around for the videos coming out between now and then, because I guarantee that you'll find something that you enjoy. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope that you have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day.